Squaddies. A typical squaddie night out would involve drinking vast quantities of beer, talking about guns all night, being involved in a brawl, having at least 5 arm wrestling competitions, and getting a new tattoo. What really puzzles the pricks is that the supporters of the English team dislike the army characters even more than the locals do. In fact, it has not been unknown for football supporters to turn on these titheads and vice versa.
There's been one criticism of the magazine which I've heard has been you appear to be endorsing like football violence and things. What do you say to that?
It's all a joke. We get letters from around the country about football hooligans, so-called. And we print them, but we always skip them at the end because they are funny to look at.
I've written a couple of silly letters, really, which I'd probably be really embarrassed to see at the moment, and hopefully no one would ever print them.
Dear Phil and Pete, I'm a Chelsea fan, and I've had a few scraps with your Scouser mates in this year's cup match at Chelsea, saying that going to Arsenal is like going to bloody Goodison Park. But as you know, Arsenal are a load of bloody wankers anyway. Terry of the Chelsea North Stand Slough firm. Anti-NF, by the way.
I think they were sort of quite at how people felt at the time, you know, when people were passionate about something, and, you know, as much as you can get passionate about being a casual, you know, I was. And I just sort of wrote to them, and obviously no one ever wrote letters to the end because they got printed.
Yeah, well, we started getting a lot of letters from around the country, and they were, well, self-professed football hooligans, talking about, they seem to be like fascinated by the whole sort of Merseyside scene, the fashion scene, the football, and they were bragging about what they were going to do when they come to Merseyside and what they were wearing. We just generally just like to try and ridicule them.
Our attitude to violence at the match was totally ambivalent. You know, we weren't on a crusade, it just happened, it was part of reality, it was part of life. We couldn't have a stance on it, seeing as the people who were involved in the magazine were, you know, had convictions for the same offence.
And I think that the end was hugely positive, because apart from anything else, it was getting people got to know each other through the end. And the more people get to know each other, the less likely at the end of the day they're going to be to sort of stab each other and all the rest of it, you know.
I think it broke down a lot of barriers, you know. I think what we were trying to do, it was pre, you know, obviously pre-house days, but what we were trying to do, I think, was explain to people through the forum of the magazine that, you know, people from different cities are fundamentally the same, they have the same problems, same worries, and the same things that excite them, and football matches excited people. There was articles in the NME and sounds about the magazine, but it was really when John Peel started announcing it on his radio show and started to read out various bits and bobs, you know. And remarkably, for such a witty man, he found it funny, you know. And so we challenged him to an interview, you know.
Hello lads, I'm such a big fan of your magazine.
Right, well, get the ale in then.
And again, they were fantastically rude, really, and irreverent, you know, and I felt I should be treated with some respect. And they really all just came along and took the mickey out of me. And then after they'd gone, I thought, well, actually, they've done exactly the right thing. You know, they've done what I would have done under the same circumstances.
After that, we sort of developed a friendship with John, and over the years, we went to a few football matches with us and shared a few pints with us. Haven't seen him for years. Don't know what's happened to him.
Well, Potter, I mean, our William has just graduated from Liverpool University, and I said to him before he went up there, I said, you need to talk to Mick Potter, I said, because here is a man who has his finger totally on the cultural pulse, you know, and I said, let him guide you through life. I mean, obviously, William doesn't listen to me, and fortunately, never. I don't think he ever met Potter, actually.
Well, there's a lot of people he's had contact at the end have gone on to be really successful. I mean, there was a magazine called Viz, which now a massive seller. I mean, they wrote into us, asking us how you go about starting a magazine, and you gave them a lot of advice. Piss off, this is our market. But Viz took it a step further, went on to be massive. When Saturday comes, specifically a football magazine, they got their ideas from the end.
James Brown, who founded Loaded and later went on to become style guru of the Western world. We first met him when he came to interview us in the mid-80s, when he was dressed in a combat jacket and had a Mohican.
The lads from the end are having a laugh at me. I need a new image.
Where the end was so important was in the people it inspired and the influence that it had. You know, long after the last magazine was ever printed, there were people like, I mean, James Brown would never have started Loaded if it weren't for the end. Terry Farley wouldn't have started Boy's Own if it weren't for the end.
You know, it gave me the idea to do Boy's Own. Every time I picked up the first sort of 15 issues of Loaded, I read either a magazine, an article that had been in the end or one that had been in Boy's Own. Normally written by someone that actually wrote for even them magazines. I think the only thing they're missing actually is the thing that certainly when we wrote that sort of in that style and the end, it was done tongue in cheek. I think now it's, you know, the new lad is taking himself a little bit too serious, really.
If you take it back to like football in the early 80s, he was like two sets of people. He was like boys and the divvies. I think eventually, like most of the boys, got sidetracked with other stuff. You know, whether it was music or you know, one end or the other of a needle or whatever. And then it was like the fanzine sort of fantasy football types who took over that sort of publishing wing of football fan culture. And I think that's stayed with us today. I mean, in a way, that's sort of preempted the Loaded and all this sort of new lad publishing that's out at, and television that's out at the moment.